All yours, my friend.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Until we've got people still coming in, so we'll let them filter in. So I'm just going to talk for the next 15, 20 minutes about whether the good guys are kind of beating the baddies. I'm told you're all highly technical people, so hopefully I've got it all right. But just to do some definitions. So asymmetric, what do we mean by asymmetric? Basically what we're looking at here is saying it's like, one side more lopsided than the other. And then the kind of warfare side of it, everyone thinks it's all nation state, but actually it's kind of like people doing bad things. So I just wanted to do on that one as well. So this is probably a quote you've all seen before at some point, somewhere, somehow. Amateurs hack systems, professionals hack people. What I mean by amateurs is they're not really amateurs. You could say there are people just looking for commercial opportunity, whereas, the professionals are all the nation state people. And that's really the kind of theme what we're looking at here today. So really what I wanted to talk about was just the kind of little kind of groups that we got in there. I think it's been really interesting over the last year to see some of the state-sponsored stuff in Russia and China being absolutely hammered by some of the kind of Ukrainian side in there as well, but they're still around. Some are there for commercial opportunity. And the reason is that, as we'll see in the next slide, is that there are a lot of there's a big difference here. Is some of the stuff are going for critical national infrastructure, some of the stuff is going for kind of commercial opportunity. But essentially, what I do with Nettitude is we do a lot of CISO level stuff. Is they just think that if you sit there in a risk committee, all they talk about is state-sponsored stuff are going to come to their company, rather than thinking from the asymmetric side, is thinking that actually it's the commercial opportunity guys that are looking to get something. So what you have here is you have things like nation states, organised crime, and you can see here is the activity, is the kind of low sophistication. So if you think of the big breaches, like remember the talk breaches and lots of other things, what that was just a guy in Northern Ireland. He was under 18. He went into a back end of a third party server and he took down a rather large communication company. But apparently, if you look through all the news stories, you had all the people from various government agencies saying it's a very sophisticated Russian state-sponsored attack. It wasn't. Okay, and that's the asymmetric side of it. It was one guy in his bedroom in Northern Ireland versus a rather large telecommunications company. Then you can see here is the perceived impact in there. So when you get towards the nation state, you probably would have had a North Korean group called Lazarus, for example. They went in, took a bank down on the Unix side. Everyone got really. But the thing that we look here is that little bit white bit in the middle. And that's really the kind of misunderstanding that we're getting a lot of, I think, within the cybersecurity industry. So a lot of what I do is sit there and the SOC and the threat intelligence people will tell me all of this is happening. And then you go to a risk and audit committee and you sit there to the board and you always have that really enthusiastic non-executive director who claims they're a cyber expert will start saying all this stuff, and then you turn up and say, present your stuff to the board, and then they'll start talking about nation state hackers, all of the world's going to end, and actually what they're not doing is they're not getting the basics right. They're not getting the psychology, the discipline, all the culture right within the business. People are still clicking on phishing email. People are still kind of going to hotel Wi-Fi. People are still doing that, and that's really, really simple stuff. And yeah, what are the board talking about? Russians, Chinese, Vietnamese, Iranians, all that lot, all kind of doing lots of fancy stuff in there as well. So, if you think of what Fancy Bear are doing, is basically the malware targeting, Russian attributes and all that stuff. And they're all going for governments, NATO's and things like that. Good old, solid, critical national infrastructure. But those are hard targets, right? A lot of time what we're happening is we're seeing opportunists that they want to go for the money. Okay, so you see credit card firms, you see e-commerce retailers, you see that. So, for example, last year I got involved in a breach with a big PLC retailer. Don't worry, it's not WH Smith, which is all we've done recently, but it was a really simple thing. It was somebody in finance clicking on an email, and because the board think, because they're in e-commerce, it hasn't happened to them, it's not going to happen to them. They were offline for 8 hours, but it took 4 months to respond to it. And when you worked out who did it, it was somebody in Hungary. So again, they made money out of it and whatever. So what you're seeing a lot of here is, are the really good guys? Are they actually going after the things? That whole threat intelligence picture that we're lacking on this one. So if you see here the amount of money that is being spent, and I think that does anyone here run a budget within an info sector in here? You know, how does the prices go up every year?
They try to.
Do they kind of try and, do you have a vendor that goes in and says we have a solution for everything, and they try and bundle everything together? And
they try to.
They try to, right. And do you deal with procurement people as well?
Yes.
And do they kind of tell you that you go for that one and not the other one?
No. Procurement doesn't tell me what to do.
Do you not have to say you're quite unique in that aspect?
I know.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, what we're seeing is that you'll get RFPs going out. You'll get the people who are non-security people doing the procurement, and this is why all the money is being spent on there. And you know, a lot of you go to a chief financial officer, and they will say security is just costing us an arm and a leg. What's the return of investment you're getting on it? It's like, well, you don't really get return of investment on security. What you do is you get an avoidance of the cyber breach. But what they won't do is they won't invest in the really basic stuff. Someone will go in and say, we need to have everything from CrowdStrike, or we need to have the Microsoft E5, or we need to have, there's another one, Tenable. That's one that's kind of like completely driving my head around the bed.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's out loud.
But essentially the spend is going up because what you see a lot of the time, especially when you do things for cyber insurance, that they're going, well, the losses are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So they think, oh, right, because the losses are getting bigger and bigger, that we need to spend more and more money in order to protect our asset. So a question I like to ask is, how many of you have filled in a cyber insurance questionnaire in the last year? And two? Sweet. And how many of you have gone back to the insurer and said, do you actually know what questions you're asking?
How many of us have trained the insurance companies on what to ask?
And that's the thing. And quite a lot of the time is that because the losses are getting bigger and bigger, the insurers are not saying you must have the absolute minimum baseline and it's minimum baseline. That would help out a lot in our industry. But again, what you've got is you've got everyone kind of pushing each other along. It's a bit like, you ever heard of something called the South Sea bubble? Where basically something happened in the 18th century. Everyone just thought there was a big problem. They just pumped more money into it, and then they realised that everything they were trying to do was completely and utterly worthless. The bubble popped, and everyone lost a whole load of money. You know, that's the whole nature that we're seeing in a lot of the corporate world. The insurers are seeing bigger losses. The board is saying, let's spend more money on security. So people in security are going, great, let's spend more money. And then what they're not doing is people are still getting hit by the basic phishing emails, the really basic stuff that has been there for ages. So I'll come to that in some of the things later. And you can see here, related work? No. So what you got here is the average data breach cost in here. So you can see kind of 2020, the pandemic started, and you can see 2021 and 2022, the costs going up a lot. Now, is that because everyone started working from home? Everyone just got sloppy. Cybersecurity training just suddenly stopped. Everyone just started, it's crazy. Ransomware shot up a lot as well. And you look in here, is in 2022, you look at the losses in the US, they kind of shot up as well. And then you see a lot of it, they're going after the healthcare. So that's probably because the US has got private healthcare, and all the insurers are paying out. And
it's the legal costs behind it. That's what's driving those costs. So the fine structures I know this because I'm based over there.
Yeah.
So the fine structures in the US have actually increased, but what's driving that cost is the legal repercussions afterwards. So your upfront costs are typically 20, 25, 30%. Your legal costs are now exceeding that considerably.
Is this from class actions?
You got it. Yeah. Not just class actions. In the financial sector, the clawbacks are now significantly higher, the costs associated with that. On the healthcare section, it's class actions, it's other lawsuits, and just legal costs as a whole are just ridiculous. And then insurance costs are obviously getting driven up. I think insurance in the US is different because they're asking more questions now in the US because they have had their asses handed to them for the last several years.
Yeah.
Because they just wanted the money and didn't think about what to ask. Now they're asking more questions. So my insurance, for me, for our organisation, our insurance, they tried travelling out and I told them to go fucking pound sand and then explained to them exactly what we were doing. So then we came to an agreement.
And also in the US, the insurers pay the fines as well. So when they get the cover...
Yeah, they do. And then it comes back on the organisations,
But there was an increase in the tax, too. there were more ransomware attacks too in the last 2 years.
Healthcare's seen as being able to pay, so the attackers are going to target them deliberately. They don't give in monkeys who they're attacking, so they don't have any scruples.
Well, the other part of that, to add to that one as well, in the US, at least in like state and federal, you actually have to disclose what your limits are, how much you're paying, and the other things. So now what we're seeing is the adversaries are going after them and basically doing ransomware for pretty much the insurance limit. So, I mean, they're doing a huge amount of intelligence background research before they choose their target. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everything out in the open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So essentially, that's kind of to your point, really.
Quote Sun Tzu.
I had to put it in there because I knew there would be some people going, "Oh yeah, very clever," and then some people going, "How good to say." So I just thought if the whole audience was completely fallen asleep by now, they'd wake up with a Sun Tzu comment. So that's why I put it in there. But the thing is that to go to your point, and I know it's a Sun Tzu comment, you're probably going to think
you're fine. I'm giving you shit. But you can heckle me later, I promise.
But if the bad guys know that they got the liability of the insurance, and they know themselves, and they know that people are going to click on the ransomware.
I will not dispute. Yeah, we'll talk about. Yeah.
So one of the things I certainly see, certainly I've seen in Europe. I don't do that much work in the US, but
smart move on your part.
But a lot of the time, what I'm seeing is that you see the good guys, the stronger kind of defences, they spend far too much time evaluating risk, not investing it, not looking into stuff, and they're not thinking about how do we react within that first hour of a cyber breach. Something will come in on the service desk, someone won't be able to treat it properly, something will happen. They're not tuned to kind of be like that kind of paramedic style mentality. They're not tuned right. If something dodgy is happening, how quickly can we analyse the issue and stop it down? And I've seen quite a lot of breaches where people just don't respond quick enough. They wait for a couple of hours and think, oh my God, it's an incident. And then they wait another couple of hours, and by that time the hacker's gone in, shut everything down, messed everything up, and it's almost on the way out.
Are you going to touch on the fact that most companies have got more of too many tools? Are you going to touch on that?
Possibly.
I mean, yeah. I don't want to spoil thunder, but if you know, that's one of those biggest issues we're seeing as well. Too many companies rely on too much freaking technology.
Yeah. They're not, you've got... Yeah, agreed. If someone who's sitting there on a service desk will look at 3 or 4 systems and say, well, I can't see anything going wrong. They won't have that technical analysis.
Exactly.
So, are we investing in the right way? It's like making sure we have the right incident response plan in place. A lot of times I see they do a tabletop exercise. They'll do a breach simulation. And people think, I've done a breach simulation, so we're ready to stop the way. But they'll do it once a year, and the people who are non-technical will go, why does someone from HR have to sit there and talk about an insider threat? They're not doing it continuously. There's not enough like fire drill type stuff happening on a continuous basis. Also, with the response team, it's like, what I find a lot of is people are just too slow to declare a major incident. They'll say a ransomware, and they'll say, oh, well, it's only hit 2 computers. We've isolated them. It's not spreading. It's not a problem. Kind of communication, that is an absolutely key thing as well. Is quite a lot of the time, because there's so much noise going on, people won't have that mentality of making sure, is it something I really need to be aware of at the right time? Also, is the collection of data. As you kind of said, there's too much reliance on the technology. What you need is making sure you get the right information and present that to the people. What a lot of people suspect when they have a conference bridge and an incident, everyone on there is technical. And I've seen it so many times. It's like, right, there's a big incident, we're going to have a call every 2 hours. So what do you do for the first hour? You talk about it. What do you do for the next hour? Work out what to say at the call in an hour's time. And that goes on. And you've got to be really, really regimented in terms of, and that's always like the collection of data and whatever. Also, negotiation. How many times have we seen non-specialist negotiators start negotiating with hacking groups, and then it all goes absolutely horribly wrong? The chances are is they go, oh, well, can you find some Bitcoin and pay them off and everything will be okay, and then realise it's not where. You need to get better at that. And the post-incident review, a lot of people say, oh, well, we patched everything up, the insurance is paid up, we'll just crack on before. But has that really changed the discipline or the culture within the organisations. So, why the threat actor is successful, adversaries are getting better. I think you made a really good point about the fact that they know how much you're being insured for, they know the systems, they are constantly targeting stuff better. So it's all about the cost of attack might have been made higher, but they're all one step ahead. A lot of the time we're seeing is adversaries, they've probably got a foothold into the system and they listen, they watch and they learn. We're not detecting them early enough. Over-reliance on technology, and also a lot of the time is security teams have limited empowerment. Quite a lot of the times, certainly I've seen, a risk goes to a risk committee, an audit says, oh yeah, can you fix this finding? And the business is basically trying to think, well, if we do the risk side, the audit side and the compliance side, then we don't have a problem because the risk is in with them. But actually what we're looking at is constantly evolving and changing risk.
No, I was going to talk about the security teams, the empowerment thing. I mean, that's something on us. That's because we're not talking the right language. So much of that is we go in there at a technical level, but we don't go and have the conversations at a business level. We don't talk the same language the business is talking. Very rarely will you see somebody going in and having a conversation where somebody in the business understands risk, finance, manufacturing, supply chain, and all the other stuff with it. So getting that seat at the table is imperative, and unfortunately in so many cases we're not spending the time to do that.
But the flip side of it is, that's a really good point, because the flip side, we're paid to do the security, but the security have to understand the rest of the business. So again, that's almost asymmetric in its nature, is that in order to get security known to the wider business, we have to speak their language, and their language is not security language.
Right.
So there's a massive race to the cloud. How many vendors are coming in? Well, if you move everything to the cloud, we can protect it all for you. And I've seen quite a few companies, what they do. They say, well, we bought this product. They give this service level guarantee that none of this would be an issue. But actually, they think that you transfer the risk. You haven't. Not really, not in the slightest. And also really about the security fundamentals, building blocks and things like this. And the one thing I do find fascinating with that, I do find a lot of people who are teenagers are coming into work. They're far more security aware than people who are in their 40s or 50s and 60s, because they will know all about scams, phishing, emails and all that. And then they'll expect to be much more liberal than the workplace because they're a bit more savvy. So I think really that, a lot of people will think they know what a phishing email is and they think that's what security is. Maybe we need to change the way in which we educate the users. It's more than just looking at your email, clicking on websites. It's about what network you connect to and many other things. So what should we be focusing on? Let's talk about the phishing thing. How many businesses really lock down USB cloud storage and manage the web browsers? Even a lot of low maturity business who are big businesses, they think, oh, well, locking down USBs is something we ought to do, but we're not quite sure. And when they do it, everyone starts complaining, and then you start understanding actually a lot of people stick USB sticks with confidential data and they'll stick it into an O2 machine because that's the way they've always done it and they think that's the most secure way of doing it. Absolutely crazy. And also managing the web browsers. A lot of places that I see, they will have their Edge, their Chrome, or dare I say Firefox, but they won't manage the browsers. And many of the times the people clicking on the link, the browsers are managed, that reduces the risk. Getting the basics right. How many people have SMB, V1 and TLS on their servers? That's always like the first thing we do. It's amazing. That's scary. Lots of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We see a lot of that in the O2 space. And how many companies, will put all the findings from an ethical hacking exercise and they'll spend their entire time going, okay, we had a pen test, ethical hack 3 months ago. Have we fixed all the vulnerabilities? Have we done all the remediation? No, well, we'll focus on that rather than actually focusing on the day-to-day stuff as well. And kind of finally, security is about one thing. It's having that mentality is that, if you're hit, it's about getting up and keeping that network secure. So, cheers. I don't know how long that was.
That was good. Yeah, we've got time for one or two questions for sure.
nobody minds, I'll add an extra couple of thoughts in. If you don't, let's face it, I'm the noisy one in the group because I'm based in the US these days. 2 thoughts. So if you go back, do me a favor, can you go back 2 slides? I'm going to mess up the clicker. Go back another one. So one thing in here that I would argue is missing, which is getting the basics right. If you don't know what assets you have inside your organization, you don't get to do another fucking thing. Because how the hell do you know what you're protecting if you don't know what you have?
Yeah.
And that's physical and data. You don't get to do anything else. You don't get to fuck around with SMB or TLS, and you don't get to go do USB shit. If you don't know what you don't have, you don't get to play with another damn thing.
To be honest, I'm probably too stuck into the security role because I thought these were the basics.
No, that's even more basic than that. This is the stupid thing about it.
Yeah.
It's even more basic. The first thing, as a CISO and as a VCISO as well, you walk into an organization, if you can't tell me how I can kill you, then how the hell do I know what to protect?
Yeah.
Even more basic than anything else. You don't get to go buy new shit.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, security is about one thing. I got one other option for you on this one.
But that's 2 bit, right?
Yeah, I'll take the second one. We have one job, and I'll be talking about it later on. We have one job in this industry. It is nothing more than protecting those around us. Nothing else matters. If you think your job is anything else other than protecting the very people that put their trust in you, either their data, their assets, their whatever the hell it is, you don't belong in this industry. So, just a different set of thoughts.
That's what I put the book about.
No, I like it.
Because there's a lot of people, but also the point with that is that a lot of people are like, well, if you get breached, that's it. Your career's over, you've failed or whatever.
You get a breach, you get up, you dust off, you learn, and you better don't make the same, make different and new and interesting mistakes. So no, I agree with that as well. Don't believe me. Yeah. Prefer you didn't get breached in the first place, which means people need to learn a little bit of human nature as well. It's good. I like it. Thank you.
Cool. All right.
Lovely.
Well done.
And my laptop back.